Shinhu's deceased fiancé returned, unaware he was already married. She wept bitterly in his arms. On the first day, Shinhuo asked me to present myself as his cousin. On the third day, he wrote me a divorce decree. She's been wandering among commoners for years, enduring untold suffering. You should let her go. Once she's recovered, I'll welcome you back as my equal wife. I accepted the divorce papers calmly. Fine. Counting the days. My real cousin should be arriving soon to take me back to Jiangnan. Shinhuo finally agreed to give me the divorce papers. He slammed the flimsy paper onto the desk. His eyes filled with disappointment. Mingyi, I thought you were reasonable. She's been wandering among commoners for years, enduring unimaginable hardships. Won't you even yield to her? Just 3 days prior, Shinhuo had found his former fiancée, Meng Yuzheng, who had died under mysterious circumstances. She had escaped the refugee uprising years ago, and after many twists and turns, someone had located her. Her memories, however, were frozen 5 years prior, back when she and Shinhuo had just become betrothed. He pitied her suffering and asked me to pose as a cousin staying in our home, fearing her sharp mind might uncover his existing family ties. He orchestrated this charade of a divorce with me. At first, I refused. He blamed me for being cold and unreasonable. At the height of our argument, Shinhuo declared, had it not been for that accident, Yuzheng would have been my wife. Tears streamed uncontrollably down my face, and my heart died instantly. His resolve had wavered, there was no need to hold him back. I picked up the divorce papers and examined them carefully. Shinhuo had thought it through meticulously. It stipulated the return of all dowry items, bearing his personal seal and the signatures of clan elders. I calmly tucked the paper away, placing it beneath my trousseau chest. Very well. Shinhuo fell silent for a moment. Candlelight flickered in the room, the flame suddenly bursting. He spoke awkwardly, Mingyi, you may continue living in this courtyard. If you desire anything, send someone to purchase it. Everything shall remain as before. Once she recovers, I will welcome you back as my co-wife. It is unnecessary. But before I could speak, a maid from Meng Yuzheng's quarters came for him. Her heart ailment has flared. She wishes to see him. Shinhuo hurried away, his sleeves stirring the sheer curtains like a bizarre dream. Fleeting and gone. Silence filled the room. I rose and pushed open the window. A warm breeze swept in, dispersing the stifling air. After a light rain, young lotus leaves unfurled, pomegranate blossoms blazing like fire. A fine season indeed. I lowered my gaze. From Yong Joe. Has there been any word? The maid Tinglan presented the letter. The young master says he will arrive in 3 days. You may make your preparations. Seated before the bronze mirror, I removed the hairpins from my hair and asked Tinglan to style it differently. Meng Yuzheng had long since noticed. The first time she saw me, suspicion arose. She confronted Shinhuo with reproach. If she is an unmarried cousin, why does she wear a woman's hairstyle? Shinhuo gave a vague answer, yet punished the maid by my side. It was likely the maid's fault, she had styled it incorrectly. He punished Tinglan by making her kneel in the courtyard. Early summer brought frequent rains, and the night breeze was chilly. When Tinglan came to me, soaked through and shivering, to beg forgiveness, my rage overwhelmed me. I smashed Shinhuo's study. The inkstone overturned, staining the portrait he had just finished. He pressed a handkerchief against the ink on his hands and looked at me coldly. Is a mere maid truly worth your anger toward me? Xia Mingyi, in our 2 years of marriage, I have been wholly devoted to you, never once treating you unfairly. And so it shall remain. You must promise me this one thing, before Yuzheng. Never say you are my wife. His words, each and every one, cut me without mercy. I stood rooted to the spot, clutching my sleeves. My heart sank bit by bit, as if plunging into an ice cave. Though it was early summer, the cold made even my voice tremble. Impossible. Shinhua's lips curved slightly, a trace of mockery in his icy tone. Then I'll just have to draft the divorce papers. He was threatening me. He knew my parents were dead, leaving me nowhere to turn for solace. Yet 2 years ago, when Shinhuo came to propose, he had clearly told me, "Mingyi, I've moved on. The one I loved is gone, now I must cherish the one before me." The moment Meng Yuzheng appeared, all those vows of eternal devotion became empty words. From harmonious companionship to mutual loathing, it took only 3 days. Before Shinhuo, I could still hold back my tears and feign composure. But now, my eyes welled up again without warning. Tinglan pinned a jade hairpin in my hair, then bowed her head cautiously and asked, "Are you still grieving, young lady?" I dabbed at the corners of my eyes with a handkerchief and forced a smile. "It's nothing. Go fetch my dowry inventory." When my father lay gravely ill, fearing my uncles might mistreat me, he used all his accumulated fields, houses, and silver as my dowry. Many precious fabrics, gold, silver, and jade artifacts were stored in the Shin family's treasury. Now, according to the divorce agreement, I must take them all. Tinglan retrieved the keys to the treasury for me. Seated on a chair, I instructed the servants to bring out all the rosewood chests. I inspected each item inside, one by one, with meticulous care. The commotion was considerable, drawing the attention of Meng Yuzheng in the west courtyard. After Shinhuo brought her back, he sent word to the Meng family. The mountains were high and the roads distant. The Meng family's reply had yet to arrive. Unwilling to subject her to further hardship, he allowed her to stay temporarily at the Shin residence. Meng Yuzheng now carried herself with the bearing of a lady. Her dark hair elegantly coiled, adorned with colorful hairpins and gold ornaments. Surrounded by several attendants, she arrived with an air of leisurely dignity. She looked at me, her tone tinged with displeasure. "What is my cousin making such a grand spectacle for?" I studied the embroidery on the round fan in my hand, not lifting my eyes to meet hers. "To retrieve the dowry." Her voice rose sharply. "Dowry?" She pointed at the chests on the floor, her delicate brows furrowing. When did Huailang ever have such wealthy relatives? The Shin family's in-laws weren't considered prominent in Langya. The Shin name carried only a reputation for integrity, with Shinhuo being the sole promising young man currently in favor. Shinhuo's wet nurse also served by Meng Yuzheng's side. Knowing the inside story, she hurried to explain, "The cousin comes from a noble family. These are all items left for her by her family, the master is merely holding them in trust." As she spoke, Tinglan opened another chest. Inside lay heaps of gold and jade, gleaming brightly. Meng Yuzheng was momentarily dazzled, her gaze fixed on the gold and silver jewelry. As if transfixed, Tinglan verified each item against the inventory list. Just as she was about to have the chest locked, Meng Yuzheng stepped forward to stop them. Rolling up her sleeves and bending slightly, she selected a gold hairpin inlaid with red agate. The pin bore the engraved character Shin. Holding the hairpin in her palm, she lifted her eyes to meet mine, a hint of mockery in her gaze. How had the servants managed to mix items from the Shin household into the inventory? Would my cousin, born into noble lineage, also consider this hairpin a rare treasure? I understood her meaning perfectly. She was implying I had used the pretext of inventorying the dowry to appropriate Shin household possessions. I stared at the hairpin, lost in thought. This hairpin was indeed from the Shin household. Shinhuo had personally drawn the design and had it crafted for me. He and I had indeed shared a time of deep affection. The servants around us fell silent. Shinhuo's wet nurse broke out in a cold sweat. Hesitating to speak, I lifted my gaze to meet hers, pointing my folding fan at the servant beside her. A sudden smile touched my lips. This is my property. Shinhuh kept it from you. So naturally they dared not tell you either. I am not some distant relative in the household, I am his lawful wife. This golden hairpin was crafted and given to me by him. The color drained completely from Meng Yuzheng's face. I know her life has been full of misfortune. And she is a pitiable person. I never intended to cause her trouble over Shinhuh. Yet she came looking for fault in me first. I stood up and took the gold-tipped hairpin back from her hand. After all, it was a valuable item, it shouldn't fall into someone else's hands. I tossed the hairpin back into the box without care. But when did it become Miss Meng's place to meddle in such matters? Meng Yuzheng bit her lip, staring at me. Her clear, black and white eyes brimmed with tears. Her body swayed unsteadily. Finally, she couldn't hold herself up. Her eyes closed. And she fainted. The servants were both shocked and frightened. Some rushed to support her. Others went to fetch a physician. And a few even planned to dash to the magistrate's office to summon Shinhuh back. Chaos erupted around her. I sat back down, leisurely fanning myself. Ignore her. Continue the inventory. As dusk fell, I returned to my courtyard. The items I could take had been packed. Fearing some might be difficult to transport, I had others specially exchanged for gold and silver. Standing before the steps, melancholy thoughts drifted like leaves in the summer breeze, rising and falling. I had married from the capital. Back then, my maternal family in distant Yong Joe had also contributed to my trousseau. My 2 cousins had specially taken leave to journey to the capital, escorting me to Langya. My second cousin, following custom, had a well dug in my courtyard. He said that since I had never drunk a drop of water from the Shin family in life, I would not let Shinhuh look down on me. But Shinhuh had his own measure of judgment. My parents were both dead, and I was estranged from my uncles. My maternal grandfather, far away in Yong Joe, was powerless to help and had no legitimate reason to interfere in the Shin family's affairs. Now, though the place remains, the people have changed. Had he cherished me even slightly, he wouldn't treat me this way. The golden sun was about to set, its last rays slowly retreating behind the high walls. I turned to go back inside and collided with Shinhuh. His face as cold as ice. He seemed furious, striding in with purpose. He casually pushed aside the beaded curtains and gauze screens, pearls clattering with a sharp clink. How long will this commotion last? I clenched my sleeve, lifting my gaze indifferently. I caused no commotion. He laughed bitterly in his rage. I've heard it all. You mobilized men to open the storeroom, deliberately letting Yuzhen witness it. She's always observant. She asked about the origin of that hairpin, and you seized the chance to reveal the truth. She certainly knows how to spin a tale. Shinhu's tone grew harsher. Is this what you wanted, her relapse triggered by such shock? I frowned, fixing him with a cold stare. Deceiving her, luring her into your estate, was that for her own good? As if struck at his core, he fell silent. But soon, his haughty demeanor returned. To let her rest and recover. I had no choice but to say we'd already divorced. He emphasized the word divorced with deliberate force. Then, as if testing something, he looked at my face. A dull ache stabbed at my heart. I didn't want him to see anything. Lowering my eyes, I sorted through the items in my trousseau, quietly tucking the neatly folded divorce papers beneath the jade ornaments. I locked the door and said flatly, "That much is true. He and I had indeed divorced. We were now strangers." Shinhuh braced his palms on the table, finding nothing to smash. Only then did he notice how sparse the room had become, his expression hardening abruptly. "What are you doing?" I lifted the trousseau, walked around him, and took a few steps toward the door. I handed the items to Tinglan, who stood waiting in the corridor. Take it away. Since we're divorced, what business do I have staying in the Shin residence? Before I reached the steps, my sleeve was suddenly grabbed. The voice behind me was hoarse, its tone fading. You really intend to leave? Without turning, I seized his sleeve, pulled hard, and wrenched a strip of fabric from his grasp. Indeed. He faltered for a moment, then laughed scornfully. Fine. I'll see just where you can go. Truthfully, I couldn't go far at that moment. I took the contracts for my attendants and maidservants, and moved the entire group into an inn. Money was not an issue for me. Fearing Shinhuh might cause trouble, I hired additional guards. The first to seek me out was Madame Song, wife of one of Shinhu's colleagues. She ascended the stairs with a fan in hand, her demeanor dignified. Upon seeing my current lodgings, her brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. Mingyi, is this where you reside now? This place simply cannot compare to the elegance of the Shin residence. The courtyard at the Shin residence was personally designed by me. I had weeping willows and peach trees transplanted there. When the flowers bloomed, I hosted banquets for the ladies and young misses. I rose, picked up the teapot, and personally poured her a cup of tea. It's only a temporary stay. She exhaled softly. That's good. I truly thought you'd lost your mind, actually stepping aside to let the newcomer take your place. Your husband, Lord Shin, has already waited 3 years for her. Now, after 2 years of marriage, he still harps on that childhood betrothal. What does that even mean? Your tactic of retreating to advance, well played. I was taken aback. She'd misunderstood too. Madame Song chattered on about how her mother-in-law had dealt with concubines in her day, urging me to take a leaf from her book. I couldn't hold back any longer and interrupted. It wasn't a strategic retreat. She paused, looking startled, and sipped her tea. I said softly, I've truly decided to leave. The decision was made hastily, but it was firm. She stammered. Is it just because he brought someone back? Perhaps he merely finds it novel after so many years apart. For 2 whole years. He hasn't even had a concubine or a mistress. I cut to the chase. This is my first time being a wife. I don't know if this is a big deal or not. I could certainly use some tricks to outmaneuver Meng Yuzheng. But what would I gain in the end? Shinhu's affection no longer matters to me. I lack neither wealth nor reputation. There's no need to expend further energy competing with her. She seemed to grasp some of it, nodding slightly before whispering, You're truly divorcing him? I handed her the divorce papers. Absolutely. After seeing off Lady Song, Tinglan entered the side chamber. Noticing my persistent frown lately, she suggested we go to the lake to admire the lotuses and gather lotus flowers. I agreed. On the lake, lotus leaves stretched to the horizon. A cool breeze rippled the water. Alone in my small boat, I drifted to a spot deep among the lotus blossoms. All around, young men and women laughed and played, reminding me of times before I was married off. My heart grew calmer. I lifted my head. Unexpectedly, I saw the last person I wished to encounter. Meng Yuzheng and Shinhuo sat together in a boat. He rolled up his sleeves, leaned over the gunwale, and dipped his hand into the clear water to pluck a lotus flower. She took the flower, cradling it in her arms, and smiled shyly, her expression gentle and bashful. Their mutual affection was enviable to all who saw them. I had forgotten it was my day off. I began to row, slowly drifting away. Ripples spread out, and Shinhuo suddenly turned his head. He rowed after me, parting the lotus leaves to squeeze alongside my boat. The small boats collided, causing a sudden jolt. I braced myself with both hands on the boat, barely steadying my balance. Shinhuo stood up, his expression laden with meaning. I truly believed you could be so heartless. You never used to go out. Yet upon hearing of me, you still came after me. Behind him, Meng Yuzheng lifted her eyes slightly. I met his gaze. Expressionless. I didn't know your whereabouts. It was mere coincidence. There must have been hundreds of people viewing the lotus. Did they all come for you? He choked. Meng Yuzheng set down the flower and plucked another budding one. She rose, walked to the bow, and offered the flower with a faint smile. Does Mingy still hold a grudge over that day? It was merely a misunderstanding. I offer my apology today. I refused. It's unnecessary. She still stepped forward, placing her foot on my boat. With full force, the small boat lost its balance, rocking violently. In her panic, she lunged toward me. The boat capsized. Caught off guard, I plunged into the water. I watched Shinhuh strip off his outer robe and leap into pull Meng Yuzheng. I cannot swim. I choked on several mouthfuls of water, my throat and heart aching intensely. 2 years as husband and wife. The last shred of affection in my heart had been ground away. Treading water, I forced my face upward, breaking the surface to wait for rescue. Wind swept the water from my face, leaving a chill. I couldn't tell if it was lake water or tears. Tingwan pulled me ashore, soaking wet. I crouched by the bank, coughing. She borrowed a cloak from a girl nearby admiring the lotus flowers and draped it over me to spare me the embarrassment. She was frantic, her eyes red-rimmed. I only intended for the young lady to relax, never expecting Magistrate Shen and Miss Meng to be present. My voice raspy, "It's not your fault." The coachman, following her instructions, drove the carriage to the shore. I pulled the cloak tighter around me as she helped me into the carriage. Before it moved, someone knocked on the window. I lifted the curtain slightly to peer outside. It was Shinhuh. His face flushed with guilt as he explained. Yuzheng is different from you. She hasn't married yet. It wouldn't do for her to be seen like this. I had to save her first. You're important too. But you're my wife. You don't need to worry about reputation. I'll protect you either way. I truly didn't mind being seen by others. But it wasn't his place to decide that for me. The guards had followed today as well, dispersing the onlookers. I stepped down from the carriage and stood before him. Seeing I would acknowledge him, his expression softened slightly. I raised my hand and struck his face hard. The sound rang out crisply. Shinhuh tilted his head, frozen in disbelief. I walked behind him. Meng Yuzheng was now utterly panicked, clutching Shinhu's outer robe as she stumbled backward. Her eyes were red. Ming-yi. I didn't mean to. I said nothing, gathering all my strength to shove her hard. She tumbled backward into the water, choking on several mouthfuls as she struggled. I withdrew my hand and turned away. Shinhuh momentarily hesitated whether to confront me or rescue her. Half his cheek flushed crimson, yet now he regarded me with an unprecedented calm. Are you done venting? She did cause you to fall in. You've had your revenge. Stop this now. He knew everything. My throat ached, and I had no strength left. I didn't want to say a word to him. I climbed onto the carriage myself and ordered the driver to leave quickly. The lake wasn't deep, and it was near the shore. Meng Yuzheng saw Shinhuh was slow to come to her rescue, so she had to climb out slowly by herself. After that day, I caught a chill. I shut myself indoors, refusing all visitors. A lingering fear still gripped my heart. In a moment of impulse, I had laid hands on them. Shinhuh is, after all, the prefectural governor. If he were to pursue this matter, I would find it hard to extricate myself. Fortunately, he values his reputation. That farce by the lake was witnessed by many. Outsiders all spoke ill of Shinhuh and Meng Yuzheng. In her haste, Meng Yuzheng made our divorce public, only inviting more condemnation. Tinglan brewed medicine for me and brought it to my bedside. Others say the young lady has been utterly broken-hearted by Magistrate Shin and now refuses to see anyone. I lifted the bowl and drank the warm medicine in one gulp. Bitterness lingered on my tongue. My heart felt equally bitter. They always love to weave such tales. I would never refuse to see anyone because of Shinhuh, no matter how much it hurt. I knew what must be done, cut ties decisively. Just as we spoke, the door to the side room was knocked upon again. Tinglan slipped around the screen, opened the door a crack, and peered out. Our young mistress is unwell and cannot receive visitors today. The visitor replied. I came precisely because I heard she was ill. A familiar voice. I threw on my outer robe and shuffled out in my slippers. It was my cousin. The moment she saw me, she frowned slightly, ushered me back to the bed, and said gently, I knew you weren't the type to feign illness or weakness. Since you're ill, rest properly. There was no need to come out to greet us. I'd managed to hold myself together alone. But seeing her, I felt so wronged I began to cry aloud. She patted my hand tenderly. We came too late, making you suffer this injustice for nothing. Your second brother is waiting downstairs. But since you're unwell, it's best to rest a few more days before leaving. I clasped her hand, my vision blurred by tears. I must depart today. My illness isn't severe, I've merely been weary lately. She reached out and touched my forehead. After much deliberation, she relented. Very well. Downstairs. My second cousin led the horses, watching servants carry dowry chests up and down with sighs. When we sent you to Langya, the 10-mile procession of red bridal attire drew envy from countless onlookers. Now the scene is quite different. Dozens of carriages nearly blocked the entire street. The surrounding villagers all stopped to watch, as if witnessing such a spectacle for the first time. Their eyes filled with astonishment. He gave a soft snort. Let them keep watching. Mingy has her own entourage too. We packed our belongings and were about to depart. From the other end of the street, someone came galloping on horseback. The speed was tremendous, dust flying in the wake of the hooves. Shinhuh still wore his official cap, though his hair was disheveled at the temples and ink stained the hem of his robe. He looked weary and slightly bedraggled from the journey. He dismounted. Second cousin, still studying at the official academy without any official rank, gave him a cool, perfunctory bow. Cousin was a fourth-rank noble lady, bearing an imperial decree. Shinhuh returned the greeting, then bowed again to his cousin. She stood on the steps, looking down at him with disdain so palpable it was nearly impossible to conceal. What brings Magistrate Shin here? Standing behind my cousin. He couldn't approach me directly. He remained frozen in place, visibly uncomfortable. There's been a misunderstanding between Mingy and me. The divorce decree was never my intention. My cousin let out a light laugh. Cutting him off. The divorce decree still exists, black and white on paper. Has Lord Shin forgotten his own words so quickly? He'd done everything to threaten me. He fell silent for a long moment, his Adam's apple rolling as he struggled to speak in a hoarse voice. I only resented her for being unreasonable. I never intended to drive her away. For years of knowing each other, 2 years as husband and wife, there was genuine affection there. My cousin frowned. And what about Miss Meng? Your former fiancé still resides in your household. What does that mean? Shinhuh opened his mouth to explain. The common folk lining the street dared not crowd closer. Yet each stretched their necks, gazing this way with eyes wide and eager. My cousin, embarrassed and unwilling to listen further, took my hand, stepped past him, and climbed into the carriage. Minister Shin's private affairs should not be discussed in front of outsiders. Mingy now has no connection to Minister Shin whatsoever. Please excuse us. Your Honor. Shinhuh stood rooted to the spot, his fingers digging deep into his palms beneath his sleeves, unconsciously drawing blood. I climbed into the carriage and drew the curtain without a backward glance, shutting out the outside world. The carriage reached the city gate. The gatekeeper halted it for routine questioning. Lord Shin declared that without a travel permit, Lady Xia could not be allowed to leave. My apologies. In this province, travel permits must pass through Shinhu's hands. My cousin glanced out the window, her gaze darkening. He certainly thinks meticulously. He truly wants to keep you here. But rest assured, my husband's classmate is now in Langya. Though the path may be circuitous, he will certainly see this matter through for you. I smiled. No need to trouble my sister and brother-in-law. What he can think of, I can certainly think of too. I remained seated, passing the item from my sleeve to Tinglan, who stood outside the carriage being questioned. She took it and presented it with both hands to the gatekeeper. After examining it, his expression turned troubled. He could only go and request Shinhuh himself to verify it. Shinhuh cradled the paper in his hands, scrutinizing it meticulously for nearly the duration of a burning incense stick. Finally, he lifted his head, his face ashen, his pupils flinching. When was this issued? I knew he couldn't find fault with it. The moment he threatened me with divorce, I resolved to leave. Before leaving, I personally submitted the divorce petition to the authorities, detailing my identity, location, attendance, and timing. At that time, Shinhuh frequently took leave due to matters concerning Meng Yuzheng. The officials below knew my status was special and didn't want to disturb him immediately, so they held off on this matter for a day. After Shinhuh gave me the divorce papers, I wrote a personal letter and entrusted a trustworthy person to deliver both documents to the official handling the case for review. By the time he resolved matters at home and returned to the magistrate's office, I had already settled everything. I lifted the curtain and met his gaze. Earlier, Magistrate Shin had repeatedly requested leave due to Miss Ming's case. This was precisely arranged during his absence from the magistrate's office. Since Magistrate Shin has verified and confirmed its accuracy, may we proceed? Shinhuh pressed his lips tightly together, his eyes rimmed with red, his shoulders trembling slightly. Mingy, I know I was wrong. The divorce papers can be voided. If that doesn't work, I'll prepare the proper gifts and welcome you back into my home. I only ask that you don't leave. He still refused to mention releasing her. I lowered my gaze indifferently. The standoff persisted. The gatekeeper, a lowly official with little authority, paced frantically, running back and forth. After another moment, someone rushed over with a message. The prefect says, "Release them." I exhaled softly. Shinhuh, however, seemed drained of spirit. His eyes dimmed, and he nearly collapsed, swaying to one side. The gatekeeper caught him just in time. "Lord Shin." The carriage rolled past him. Wheels clattered. Horses whinnied. I sat silently inside, a breeze lifting the curtain slightly. Sunlight slanted in, revealing the landscape outside. Dense green trees cast deep shadows, few people were in sight. We had left the city. Returning to Yong Joe by both land and water took many days. My elderly maternal grandmother personally came out to meet me at the city gates. Her hair was now entirely white. As she stroked my cheek, her eyes reddened with heartache. A lump formed in my throat, and I buried my face in her embrace. It wasn't that I felt particularly wronged. I've always been quick to retaliate, so I returned the favor on the spot. She patted my back. "You should have given it back. We'll be here for you, no matter what." I temporarily stayed in the courtyard where my mother lived before her marriage. Though long uninhabited, it was regularly cleaned, so it hadn't fallen into disrepair. Even the furnishings inside were brand new. After unpacking, I rose and selected several valuable pieces from the dowry to present to my aunt and cousin-in-law. Both were gentle and gracious women. They insisted my gifts were too lavish, refusing repeatedly before finally accepting. We sat together again, sipping tea and sharing many heartfelt words. In the pavilion, my cousin-in-law fanned herself and asked, "Mingyi, do you have any intention of remarrying?" I lowered my head. Not at the moment. My heart was torn. Having just divorced Shinhuh, I had no desire to jump back into the fire. But because I had misjudged one man, did that mean I should keep all men at arm's length forever? I couldn't make up my mind. Life is long, there was no need to force myself to see things clearly just yet. A gentle breeze rippled the tranquil lake surface. My aunt smiled, using her bowl lid to gently skim the tea foam. True. There's no rush. You haven't returned to Yong Joe in 5 years. You should explore the world more, don't fret over marriage matters. Returning to Yong Joe made me forget all my troubles. Staying at my maternal grandparents' isn't a long-term solution. I've purchased another residence and am managing it myself. Life is peaceful and leisurely. Shinhu's perspective. The Meng family's reply arrived very late. The matriarch of the Meng household stated that Meng Yujing is a woman of her own mind. Whether to uphold or annul the former betrothal rests entirely with her. They didn't send anyone to fetch her either. Shinhuh frowned at the letter. The Meng family's stance was peculiar. It stirred his suspicions. Meng Yujing tiptoed to snatch the letter, glanced at it, then tucked it into her sleeve. She lifted her face and smiled at him. What's wrong? Huizhou? Isn't it good that everything is left to me? Of course it isn't. Without parental consent. He felt something was missing. How had it been with Xiamingyi? Back then, he was still studying at the Imperial Academy in the capital. Not yet 20. Upon first hearing of Meng Yujing's death, he had been utterly heartbroken, sinking into despair for months. The Meng family came specially to see him, bringing restorative medicines and returning the marriage contract. Their words trailing off. The second daughter is no longer with us. To avoid delaying your marriage, let this engagement be dissolved. Shinhuh took the contract. His grief deepening. He remained listless and despondent for days. Then Xiamingyi appeared. Minister Xia and his wife were both in poor health. After years of marriage, they had only this one daughter, whom they had spoiled rotten. She acted on impulse, loving fiercely and hating just as intensely. To someone like him, trapped in his own gloom, she was a beacon of longing. He had sought this marriage himself. She had come with him to Langya, accompanied by the 3 letters and 6 rites. A procession of bridal finery stretching for 10 li. The ceremony was complete. Clan elders witnessed the exchange of vows, pledging lifelong devotion without doubt. Meng Yujing saw him lost in thought, bit her lip, and reached out to tug his sleeve. Now Xiamingyi is gone too. Our marriage. Shinhuh subtly avoided her touch. There's no rush. The betrothal gifts aren't ready yet. He looked at her, as if reading her thoughts. A chill in his gaze. You don't want to end up like Xiamingyi, do you? Meng Yujing grew anxious. The gifts needn't be extravagant. Shinhuh glanced at her but said nothing. She understood his stance, yet found it hard to convince herself. Things had been perfectly fine before Xiamingyi left. She was astonished herself. She hadn't even deployed all her tactics. Yet Xiamingyi had departed so decisively. She and Shinhuh had nearly quarreled a few times. Dusk was drawing near. Shinhuh packed his things and left the room, ignoring Meng Yujing's pleas behind him. Xiamingyi had been gone for several days. As time passed, the pain in his heart didn't fade, instead, it grew more intense. Her presence lingered everywhere in the mansion. The weeping willow by the pond had been transplanted during their wedding year. The peach tree in the courtyard was also planted by her own hands. As night descended, he stood before the empty room, a hazy feeling taking hold. Someone should be there. Combing her hair before the mirror, Shinhuh had long since regretted it. His youthful ideal was nothing more than this. He had merely assumed Xia Mingyi had only him, which led to his reckless abandon and ultimately, his grave mistake. The carriage journey was slow, governed by strict protocol. He feared he might never see her again. The torment of longing nearly drove Shinhuh mad. He could only drown his sorrows in drink. He wasn't much of a drinker and rarely socialized before. After several bouts of heavy drinking, he forgot his sorrows and his duties. This displeased the governor above him. News of Shinhuh reached him again only half a year later. Truthfully, I hadn't paid much attention to their affairs. It was my cousin's wife who heard the story, took it as a joke, and relayed it to me upon her return. Meng Yujing never entered the Shin household. Yet outside, she still carried herself as the wife of the chief secretary, causing quite a few embarrassments. In the depths of winter, snow piled up beneath the eaves. Inside, charcoal burned in the stove. With nothing else to do, I held a cup of hot tea, listening lazily. Shinhuh said little, and others left her be. But a month ago, a man sought her out, claiming she wasn't the chancellor's wife, but his own. Panicked, she went to beg Shinhuh. That man was merely a commoner. Even if Shinhuh wanted to protect her, he couldn't do much. In his fury, he spilled everything. It turned out she hadn't died all those years ago. After over a decade of childhood friendship with Shinhuh, she knew him inside out. Long since weary of him, she refused to marry him. Instead, she had an affair with a guard in the mansion and used the chaos to fake her death and escape. Having endured enough hardship, she now wished to return. Yet the Meng family, priding themselves on their integrity, deemed her a disgrace and refused to acknowledge her. Shinhuh had guarded her honor for 3 years in vain, even divorcing his proper wife for her sake. Now, he had become the biggest laughingstock. Shinhuh flew into a rage, severed all ties with her, and banished her from the estate, declaring they would never meet again. Though reputation shouldn't imprison people, her case was indeed rare. Meng Yujing, lacking any foundation to stand on, would likely face hardship after being expelled from the estate. I listened, stunned, forgetting even to sip my tea. So that's how it was. My cousin-in-law chuckled. At least you left the Shin household early. Their disgrace won't drag you down. I nodded repeatedly. A sigh of relief escaped me inwardly. Then I recalled the letters Shinhuh had sent me over the past half year. At first, I was curious about what he wanted to say and opened them. But finding them filled only with his regrets, I lost interest and never read another. Naturally, I never wrote a single reply. I retrieved that stack of letters and tossed them into the stove. The flames roared brighter. I gathered my sleeves and drew closer, warming my hands. The year drew to a close. The new year approaching. My uncle had gone to the capital to report on his duties. The family banquet, as customary, would be lavishly prepared. My cousin's wife and I worked together on the arrangements. Lanterns hung, new window decorations pasted, everywhere radiated festive cheer. My 2 young nephews, not yet of school age, wore the jingling gold bracelets I'd given them. They raced and played beneath the eaves, their bells clinking and clanking, filling the air with lively noise. My aunt stood by the door, watching the children. Her eyes crinkled as she said to me, "You were just as lively when you were little. Now you've grown so composed." I lowered my lashes and smiled, lips pressed together. Though it was winter, I felt not a hint of cold. Before New Year's Eve, my uncle returned. At the banquet, he and my cousin clinked cups and exchanged toasts. When they reached the most spirited part of their conversation, both burst into laughter. I set down my chopsticks, looked up, and watched them with some puzzlement. My uncle explained, "I was just recalling some matters from the bureaucratic world. But since there are no outsiders here, it's safe to speak freely." Shinhuh faced impeachment. First, his immediate superior, the prefect, accused him. He was charged with incompetence and abuse of power. Even a minor matter like releasing someone from the city required the prefect's personal approval. With these two accusations piled upon him, his official position was now in jeopardy. The censorate has a close friend of my father's, who has always pitied me for being orphaned. During his inspection, he heard how Shinhuh treated me and flew into a rage. He rallied his colleagues to impeach Shinhuh. They accused him of forcing his wife away, questioning his moral character. One charge after another brought him down overnight, from a promising 5th-ranked chief clerk to a 9th-ranked county magistrate, banished to the southern frontier. My uncle needn't submit another memorial. After he finished speaking, he had the servants bring out more dishes for me. On such a fine day, I'd rather not dwell on him. Eat a little more. I picked up my chopsticks, feeling as if I'd returned to the days before my marriage. All troubles vanished. Winter passed. Spring arrived. It was time for spring outings once more. My cousin-in-law took me out for tea. These past months, I'd rarely ventured out. Meeting few new people, a source of worry for my aunt and grandmother. At the tea house, my cousin-in-law teased me. Mingy, barely 19, and already fond of holing up indoors for tea? I reached out and picked up a peach blossom pastry, feeling a pang of melancholy. 19 years old, married for 2 years, then divorced. I was different from most people. She dropped her smile and said seriously, "What's so different? Yong Joe isn't full of pedantic scholars who cling to rules. Shinhuh was in the wrong, not you. Speaking of which, several families have inquired about you before. All were fine young men, both in looks and character. Seeing you had no interest in such matters, I never mentioned it to you." I froze. "Is that so?" My cousin-in-law rose, pushed open the window, and invited me to look. Apricot blossoms drifted down. Below, young men rode horses, passing through the streets in 2s and 3s. I peered out the window a few times, still not grasping her meaning. She said, "Among them, one has already sent a matchmaker to our door." I blinked, struggling to ask, "Shall I guess?" She replied, "Of course not. You get to choose." Me. I felt awkward staring at them and was about to look away when one suddenly turned his head, gazing up at the balcony. His gaze was clear and sharp, like the waters of slender West Lake. My heart pounded like thunder. Flustered, I shut the window, my face flushing crimson. My cousin-in-law smiled meaningfully. "I'm embarrassed," I stammered. She took my hand and led me downstairs. I couldn't bring myself to pull away forcefully. Following her slowly, I whispered, "You said you wouldn't pressure me?" She didn't turn back. "I'm not forcing you. I just suddenly remembered, let's buy a kite and fly it." She really took me kite flying. On the city outskirts, I stood motionless, kite in hand. "Go play," she said. A girl with twin buns beside me called out, reminding me to let go of the string. Unaccustomed to this after so long, my hands felt clumsy. I started running slowly, letting the string out, glancing left and right. I momentarily lost focus. The kite flew into the trees, caught in the branches. I craned my neck upward, standing on tiptoe, straining to reach it. Someone stepped over me, stretched out an arm, and plucked the kite free. It was the man who had locked eyes with me earlier. My cheeks flushed slightly as I awkwardly thanked him. He smiled and introduced himself. The spring breeze caressed my face. The string in my hand gradually loosened. The kite swayed and drifted upward, slowly fading into the bright spring light. Just like the rest of my life. The end.